Colonel Michael Waltz with me now, Lieutenant Colonel, former Green Beret commander, former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney. How you doing, Michael? Good evening to you.
Hey, Bill. Good evening.
You know, my sense is if you go back 12 years in the Middle East, you think about southern Lebanon and the buildup of Hezbollah,
right,
and the amount of rockets they have in southern Lebanon. All it takes is one or two Katyusha rockets fired into Israel to ramp this thing up. And I think that's the point that we have reached at the moment. Does it go there, or does it cool down?
Well, I think what we're seeing is the culmination of a couple of things. One, Iran and Hezbollah have made more gains in the last 8 years under both as a result of the billions that flowed into Tehran as part of the Iran deal, and then essentially the Obama administration turning its back on the region. And that's all coming to a head now. I think a lot of President Trump's critics are trying to blame the timing of this on him backing out of the Iran deal. But as you noted, this has been building for some time. And listen, Bill, the Iranian regime has not been building roads and bridges with the billions that flowed in as part of the Iran deal. They've been on a shopping spree with Moscow and with Russian weaponry, number one. And number two, they've been pumping that money into its proxies into Syria. And that's why you've seen so many protests in Tehran, because the Iranian people had an expectation that the billions coming in would help the economy, and instead they've seen the regime pump it into military infrastructure, and that's all coming to a head now with the Israelis.
It's quite clear that the Israelis had their eye on these targets for a long time, in and around Damascus, armed by Iranian Quds forces, and they went after them. They waited for their moment, and they're reporting that this mission was a complete success.
Well, two things.
I don't know how you characterize that just yet, Michael.
Well, I would call it a butt whipping, to use the term that we use in the South. From the Israelis really smacked the Iranians hard here. But I would call it two things. One, I think there's a misconception that the Iranians are only helping Hezbollah and its proxies in Syria. Iranian ground forces, its military, its uniformed forces are on the ground in Syria, helping the Assad regime and propping it up, and building up its infrastructure on the Israeli border to be able to hit our greatest ally. And I think what President Trump knew and knows is that we have to stand with our ally, and the Israelis essentially took that infrastructure out. Yeah. This is a real shift on the Israeli part, in that they have been kind of holding back and letting ISIS and the Sunni extremists kind of fight it out with Assad and Hezbollah and the Shia extremists. It got to the point now where they had to step into a big way, and they did so, and they did so incredibly effectively.
My feeling now is, what does Iran do in kind? And we can't answer that right now. Well, but on Monday, the U.S. Embassy moves from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and there will be a U.S. delegation in Jerusalem for that moment. And you know the unrest it's caused along the Gaza Strip over the past month. And what is next then? As we are fully engaged with Benjamin Netanyahu, and clearly against the Iranians out of Tehran.
Well, the Trump administration's fully engaged with our Israeli ally, and rightly so. And we're standing with them, not only militarily, but we're standing with them diplomatically, and essentially realizing a promise of the last 3 to 4 presidents since the mid-90s, in terms of recognizing a capital that has really always existed, and the Israelis have the right to exist. So I think that on the diplomatic front, that's just realizing something that has been in train for some time. But importantly, we have to stand with the Israelis militarily, and they cannot, and we should not allow the Iranians in a very strong way to build up on their border. And they've essentially taken them out.
Yeah, one more question on this. For these people in Elkhart, Indiana, inside that gym, how do they feel about ripping up the nuclear deal with Iran? My guess is they like it when you stick it to the mullahs.
Well, I think they realize, and they see this president as standing with our allies and showing strength to our adversaries, whether that's North Korea, China, Russia, or Iran. And what we all instinctively know is that those regimes respect and respond to strength. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing in North Korea, and I think that's what you're going to see with the Iranian regime eventually.
Nice to see you, Michael. Michael Waltz there in Washington, D.C. Greatly appreciate that.